Today, we are diving deep into one of the biggest companies on the planet. We're going to break down a recent PepsiCo earnings call to get the real story behind the snacks and drinks, the ones we all see on the shelves every single day.
And that right there, that's the core question facing the makers of Lay's, Doritos, and of course, Pepsi. See, for a company that's built on a foundation of constant growth, selling less product, well, that's a huge problem. So what is actually going on behind the scenes?
This is the number that really set off the alarm bells. A 3% drop in the actual volume of food they sold in North America. Now you have to remember, when you're operating at the massive scale of a PepsiCo, a dip like this is a massive deal. It signals that something has to change, and fast.
So you might be wondering, how do we know all this? Well, we're pulling this information directly from their earnings call. Think of it like a company's public report card. It's where the CEO basically has to stand up and explain not just what went wrong, but more importantly, how they're going to fix it.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the problem itself, then we'll dissect why this slowdown is happening. From there, we'll walk right through their three-part comeback plan, see how they're innovating, figure out how they're going to pay for it all, and finally, what the road to 2026 looks like.
First up, let's really get into the weeds here and diagnose the issue. Because before we can even talk about a solution, we have to understand the problem. Why exactly are people buying fewer bags of chips and bottles of soda?
And the numbers, well, the numbers don't lie. This data is straight from their report, and it shows the pain points crystal clear. You can see that 3% volume drop in both food and beverages in their biggest market, North America. Even their international food business took a small hit.
So, what was the official story from the CEO? Well, for food, he explained they stopped doing those massive, deep discounts on single brands, and that decision hurt their volume numbers. For drinks, he said that negative 3% is a little misleading. Apparently, some accounting quirks are hiding the fact that core brands like Pepsi are actually growing. And internationally, it's pretty simple. They just had a terrible summer with bad weather in key European markets. Okay, enough about the problem. Let's get to the good stuff, the solution. The earnings call laid out PepsiCo's grand strategy to turn this whole thing around, and it's all built on three key pillars.
CEO Ramon Laguarta broke it down like this. First, they've got to be brilliant at the basics. That means perfecting everything, from pricing to just making sure the shelves are always stocked. Second, they're relaunching their biggest, most iconic brands to get people excited again. And third, they're hitting the accelerator on growth in really hot areas, like on-the-go snacks and healthier options. And this wasn't just some corporate buzzword salad. The CEO used this phrase, sense of urgency, over and over again. He was laser-focused on what he called reigniting top-line growth, which is just a fancy way of saying they need to get their overall sales numbers heading back up. The message was clear. We know there's a problem, and we are moving fast to fix it. And to prove they're making progress on that first pillar, just look at their service levels. After some internal system snafus, they're back up to nearly perfect, 97 to 98%. Now that is a huge win, because it means retailers like Walmart or Kroger can count on them to keep shelves stocked, and that is absolutely crucial for keeping a good partnership and getting that prime shelf space.
All right, now for what I think is the most exciting part of their whole strategy. Their big bet on innovation to win over the next generation of consumers.
I love this quote. It's such a fascinating peek into the future of food. You know how protein became the absolute must-have nutrient of the last decade? Well, PepsiCo's CEO is placing a bet that consumers are about to get just as obsessed with fiber.
So how are they turning that vision into actual products you and I can buy? Well, they're going all in on protein. I'm talking Doritos protein, people. They're also rolling out a new naked platform with no artificial colors, using trendy new oils like avocado, and of course they are injecting more fiber across their whole portfolio. And if you want a super modern example, get this. They're developing a brand new Propel drink specifically for people on GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic. It's being designed with special electrolytes, high fiber, and protein to meet their very specific needs. I mean, this just shows they are tapping directly into the biggest health trends of the moment.
But hey, they're not just creating new stuff in their own labs, they're also buying their way into these high-growth areas. They've grabbed Poppi, that super trendy prebiotic soda, and Siete, a hugely popular Mexican-American food brand. Plus, they're adding the Alani Nu energy drink to their absolutely massive distribution network. It's a classic case of if you can't beat them, buy them.
All this innovation, all these acquisitions, that costs a lot of money. So the big question is, where is it all coming from? Let's take a look at the financial engine that's powering this whole comeback.
It turns out they're finding the money by getting much, much more efficient. A perfect example is this one North America model they're testing out in Texas. So instead of having totally separate warehouses and trucks for snacks and drinks, they're combining them. It sounds so simple, right? But at their scale, a move like this saves an absolute fortune.
And that's just the beginning. They are, in their own words, aggressively attacking the cost structure. And what that means in the real world is closing down older, less efficient factories and streamlining everything from their supply chain to their sales teams. The goal is to become a leaner, more agile company.
So what's the ultimate point of all this? It's to get back to what they call their long-term algorithm. And yeah, I know that's some serious corporate speak. It's just a fancy term for their target of steady, predictable growth year after year. All of these moves, the cost-cutting, the innovation, it's all designed to get them back on that track.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. What does the path forward really look like? And more importantly, when do they expect this big plan to actually start delivering results?
The CEO actually put a date on it. He said they have a clear line of sight to getting back to their target growth rate at some point during 2026. That is a bold statement, and it really shows that management is incredibly confident their plan is going to work.
So let's just recap the core story here. The challenge was simple: slowing sales. The solution? A really comprehensive plan built on flawless execution, revitalizing their biggest brands, and pushing some truly bold innovation, all of it paid for by a massive efficiency drive.
Look, the plan is ambitious and the strategy is clear, but the biggest question of all still remains. In a world where our tastes are changing faster than ever, with endless new options popping up every day, will all of this be enough to win the hearts and the wallets of the modern consumer? Only time will tell.